Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we're taking a look at a very interesting black win by Minic against Vajolet in the TCEC Season 22 Swiss 3. So black wins are pretty unusual at the TCEC, so it's always worth taking a look at them. And this one is extremely interesting. Minic plays very aggressively, very riskily right from the start. And, well, it carries on with exchange sacrifices and a king moving around in the centre. It's a really great game, so let's have a look. So how did the opening start? It was a modern, and then we get e4, g6, d4, bishop g7, knight f3, d6, and bishop c4. And this is a system that has been played by Vladimir Kramnik, so you've got to take it seriously. The idea actually is to defend the e4 pawn not with the knight but with the queen, for example from e2. So after knight f6 we can just play queen e2, and then what we're going to do, we're going to follow up with c3 and just defend the d4 pawn with the c pawn. You're not trying to refute the modern in this way, but you're simply trying to set up a good solid centre, claim the advantages that you've got because black didn't occupy the centre at the start, and, well, try and give black a bit of a cheerless, passive position. So Minic played the move e6, castles knight e7, and, well, this leads to the hippopotamus structure. Black's going to play, other things being equal, a6, b6, bishop b7, knight d7. Used to be a bit of a joke opening, really, but actually these hippopotamus systems have been used a lot in against all sorts of different white systems against the modern, and well, you see it regularly at the TCEC, and black does pretty well. I mean, there have been some wonderful games in this structure, human games as well, and I think, you know, one that really sticks in my mind is the game Baburin against Tony Miles. Do take a look at that game if you get the chance. You know, it's in about 1995-96, and well, just shows Tony at his absolute best. In this position, Vajolet did something a little bit strange. He played bishop f4. I mean, there are many positive sides to it, and it's not a bad move. You know, the bishop is developed, the knight's going to come out to d2, the pawn's going to come to c3 to defend d4, and what white doesn't want is the bishop to be blocked on c1 behind a knight on d2. However, you know, this bishop on f4, you know, you do find very often that bishops, in the opening at least, are just as strong on their initial squares as something happening at the TCEC there. Komodo, I think, giving Cheng a bit of a hard time. But yeah, the bishops are often just as good on their initial squares, and it's worth waiting before developing them. And in actual fact, you know, I mean, I would much prefer to play in this position something like rook e1, and then we play bishop b3, c3, bring the knight Lopez style round to g3, and then later see what we're going to do with a dark squared bishop. And in the games that I ran between Dragon and Stockfish on my huge 94 thread machine, you know, this turned out very, very well indeed for white. But, you know, bishop f4 isn't too bad, but what Minic does is incredibly aggressive. It really plays straight away to exploit this and plays h6, knight c6, attacking the pawn on d4, and then g5 and f5. Wow, look at that. So black is simply threatening the move f4, trapping the bishop on g3, and it's probably around this stage that you sort of say, oh my goodness, why on earth did I move that bishop from c1? But, well, you did it, so there's nothing much to be done, really. Now, in my engine games, white was playing takes, which is very, you know, obvious. Just open up the e-file whilst the black king's on e8, open up the a2 g8 diagonal whilst the black king is on e8. And here both Komodo Dragon and Stockfish wanted to play d5, which is very sensible, to be honest. You know, it's disrupting the black position. Okay, it's giving black the opportunity to castle, but it is establishing an outpost on the e6 square. And for example, this was a game Komodo Dragon against Stockfish, knight a5 played, bishop d3, castles b4, f4. So yeah, the knight on a5 is trapped, but the bishop on f4 is trapped. To be honest, you know, if I reached this position in one of my games as black, I'd be delighted. You know, this is a very confusing looking position, lots of pawn weaknesses, very high chance, I think, of a decisive result. In engine games, it's not, quite the case. Obviously, I mean, white is better here because of the weakness of the light squares around the black king. But Stockfish held it with reasonable comfort, and so definitely quite a decent approach for white, but not losing for black in any way. What Vajolet did after e takes f5 was to play the immediate h4. I mean, it's h4 is a weird move. I mean, you are taught don't move pawns in front of your king because that just gives targets to the opponent. And also, don't move pawns on the side where you're weaker. But yeah, if white isn't going to play a move like d5, isn't going to try and disrupt black, then well, I mean, you've got to try and find some sort of space for your pieces because I mean, black is gaining space at a rapid rate. White can get completely squashed. I mean, this gets very, very sharp in actual fact because black starts extending more, cramping the white pieces, but of course giving black, a bigger and bigger area to defend. And there are weak squares all over the place. So black played d5, just that allows the king to castle, or at least to get out of the centre if necessary. Bishop b5, f4, blocking in the bishop. And now I suppose the first challenge we need to deal with the threat on the g5 pawn. I mean, actually, my engines, Dragon and the Stockfish, really thought that black was completely fine here. One idea that they wanted to play was queen d6, not even bothering to defend this pawn, because if we go takes and knight g5, then queen h6 is going to be very, very dangerous indeed. But what Minic did was also very reasonable. Bishop g4, pinning the knight to the queen, and so not allowing the pawn to be taken. And well, black's got lots of ideas. I mean, black is even being very flexible here. Obviously maintaining the possibility of castling queenside or kingside later. Here again, Vajolet doesn't really get to grips with the position. I mean, just from a human point of view, I'd be getting rather worried here with white. Simply that I know that I'm attacking these pawns, and but I don't really feel like I've got a massive threat of taking them because opening up those the H file is just going to be rather dangerous for my own king. So I'd really be looking to try and neutralize some stuff, maybe exchange off queen, something like that. And in fact, when you give it to Stockfish or Dragon, they are putting on the brakes really. Bishop e2, queen d6, knight e1 was Komodo Dragon's idea. Takes, castles, and knight d3. And we've got the pieces out of the onrushing attack. We're going to do something like rook e1, maybe queen e6 check to exchange off queens, and then eventually we'll try and do something like g3 and break open the king side. It's fine for white essentially, but as you can see, I mean, I think it's already costing white effort and precision in order to get a decent position. So I think it shows how worthwhile the very aggressive play that black's been doing. It how worthwhile that is. So rook e1 was played by Vajolet. Castle kingside, knight b3, threatening knight c5. So black plays b6, and now takes and knight bd2. And I do understand the point of this move. I mean, we've been threatening knight c5, and then when black plays b6, it means that the knight on c6 is a little bit weaker. That makes it harder for this knight on e7 to move away, but it is too tempy, and that just gives black so much time to defend and strengthen its position. And this is inconvenient, but we do have moves even like a6 to chase away the bishop. So it's not like this is absolutely permanent pressure. I mean, I have played ideas like this in games, but I've always felt rather uncomfortable and rather as if I'm on the back foot, but actually I couldn't think of anything else. I just I just came up with this, and I made a weakness, and hopefully that'll help somewhere in the future. But no, it doesn't feel like the right plan to me. And again, you know, I mean, you see what Stockfish and Dragon are doing in my games. At any stage, they're trying to bring the bishop back to e2, trying to exchange the bishops, get the knight out of the way of the onrushing g-pawn. So bishop f6 was played. Again, Stockfish and Dragon were kind of looking at going queen d6 to h6, which seems very, you know, very interesting to me. I mean, afterwards you're going to play bishop f6 and rook f7 to h7. That feels pretty good. But Minic played bishop f6, and you know, the idea really is probably going to be to play king g7, rook h8, and maybe bring the pieces across this way. It's a matter of taste, really. But the thing I like about queen d6 is that it helps to cover the centre, a lot of those weak squares. So yeah, just feels nice and efficient. But I wouldn't say that bishop f6 is wrong in any way. Well, now the surprises continue, really, because White played g3 here. Again, you know, breaking this rule, don't weaken your king side. And, you know, this is definitely weakening the light squares around the white king. You know, don't move pawns in front of your king. Don't move pawns on the side where you're weakest. But again, you know, actually, the only place really where white's got some influence on black's position, where white can really, you know, make black think about what it's going to do, is on the king side. That's really the main source of potential counterplay. So white's got to, you know, fight fire with fire and attack black. I think, you know, what does help you know, in this decision is that the black king is on the king side too. If the black king was on the queen side, I don't think you'd see white playing a move like g3. But, you know, when you open the g file, the black king's on g8 as well is going to be opened. So yeah, you know, it's going to be risks for both players. So a6 played, bishop e2, queen d6, defending the pawn on f4, takes, king h1. And yeah, I mean, here black needs to have a little bit of a think, because its king is now also in the firing line. The white king moves to h1, not a great spot for it, only with a bishop on h2 in front. But yeah, the g file, the king is on g8, so black's got to do something about this. And well, Minic finds a very nice idea, and I think already here Minic was anticipating an exchange sacrifice. So he played bishop f5, rook g1, king f7. And I mean, there really do seem to be a lot of holes in black's position. You know, just the king is there. If we get something on h5 check, you know, the king might be forced to come to e6, who knows. But I think the key thing that's lacking in white's position here, well, I mean, first of all, the king on h1 is always going to temper white's attacking possibilities, because yeah, its king is always likely to be ripe for a counterattack, or to sort of stumble into the middle of the conflagration if white tries anything too dramatic. But I think the other thing is that white doesn't really have any central control. So you know, black's got very good pieces here. Knight e5 is possible, but easily dealt with, and that means that black does have, you know, a very easy path to the queen side, just to get away from any white attack. So yeah, that lack of central control is kind of ensuring that white doesn't have any clear way to exploit the black king. But knight e1 was played, a very nice multi-purpose move actually. So rook h8, bishop h5 check, that's the first idea. King e6, look at that. And knight g2, and this was you know, a very nice maneuver from Vajolet. This knight bishop is blocking the h file. It's temporary, you know, it's only a piece supported by a queen, but it's enough for the moment. And now knight takes f4 is threatened, and of course, you know, there's also, when you take this pawn, this bishop is also attacking the queen, so lots of tactical possibilities being opened up there. But Minic had spotted this, and well, had this lovely idea. Rook h5 takes, and rook h8, attacking the queen. And well, white's got to be very careful here, because you know, you're only an f3 away from lining up with pieces against the bishop on h2. So white played the queen to f3, attacking the pawn on f4, also blocking the advance, and now knight g6. And Yeah, I mean, this is actually a pretty crazy position. I mean, sometimes you don't really notice it when engines are playing and you sort of say, oh yeah, they think that's best, you know. But then you look at the position, you say, well, you know, black's, this is like some shogi position, you know, where the king comes forward and surrounded by its small pieces. Well, generals in shogi, its minor pieces here. I mean, really, this is an exceptionally crazy position, and black has sacrificed the exchange for it. But, well, you do notice that, and this is going to be a constant theme of the rest of the game, that although white's got, you know, 3 major pieces, not easy to use them in any meaningful way, because black's minor pieces are covering the open files so much. Of course, the white king is on one of the open files, and that's controlled by black, so white's only got, you know, sort of 2 of the 3 files. And the other thing is these minor pieces, you know, they are so passive, struggling so much to get some sort of activity. So yeah, I mean, Minic was very optimistic. Minic always is. Yeah, Leela and Stockfish thought this was 0-0, and actually so did Vajolet too. But I think that this Leela Stockfish 0.00 was of a different quality to Vajolet's, and I think you're going to see that throughout the rest of the game, because the things that Stockfish and then Dragon in my engine games were suggesting, you know, this was yeah, this was really much better than what Vajolet did. So knight e1 played. This is a good idea. Try to get that knight on g2 more to an active square, either d3 or f3. And now Minic played knight c7, which is very interesting. I mean, actually, Stockfish and Dragon were playing rook h3 mostly. And, well, you know, this more or less forces white to give up the queen for 2 rooks. But, I mean, you know, both Dragon and Stockfish thought this was better for white, but it was only draws. There wasn't a single black win amongst these. You know, I mean, white gets the pieces out, hits the pawn on f4, gets the rook active, and it's kind of hard to make any progress. So actually, from that point of view, I like Minic's move, which was to play knight e7. You know, don't grab any material yet, keep it tight at the back, and yeah, just play for long-term pressure. So queen e2 check, king f7, knight ef3, a5, intriguing. What on earth is that move for? I mean, it's you know, stopping white from capturing the pawn on a6, but does it have any purpose apart from that? Well, you're going to see it's actually part of a huge Minic plan in actual fact. And I mean, here quite intriguingly, you know, both Stockfish and Komodo Dragon thought that white had achieved the optimal defensive structure. So they were playing, you know, moves like rook e1 and then just basically waiting, queen f1, queen e2, queen a6, b3, little moves like that, but not really doing anything dramatic at all, waiting for black to find some way to improve its position. And that was quite, yeah, you know, that was quite interesting. In the next few moves, yeah, Vajolet maneuvers around with its minor pieces, and actually that does not turn out to be very successful. Let's have a look how that worked out. So rook c1, knight f8. This is a nice maneuver. Knight coming round to e6, because actually, you know, if you're looking at one piece that isn't doing the optimal, not easy to spot, but it's actually this knight on e7, which doesn't have much purpose really. So Minic takes has the idea then of rerouting this knight to g6, getting the knights instead of e7 g6, getting them to e6 and g6. And I mean, this turns out to be a wonderful defensive structure. You know, between them, the knights are covering so many squares in the center on the open files. The amazing thing, or the thing that's really slightly difficult to judge, is that white manages to exchange off a knight for the dark squared bishop, so black doesn't have the 2 bishops anymore. And yeah, you know, I mean, that's a very difficult one to assess. I mean, you know, to me it looks like fresh holes have been created. But what Minic has worked out is that there's no real way for white to exploit it. How would you exploit it? You'd want to get a knight onto e5. But yeah, that knight's quite a way away, and well, Minic is going to make sure that the knight does not get remotely close to that square. So rook h5, threatening bishop takes bishop e4 check. Queen e2, rook h3, and well, what is this rook threatening? It's threatening f3. at some stage, threatening bishop e4 check, of course. What it's also doing, it's cutting across the third rank, and so it's stopping white from even contemplating knight c1 to d3 to e5. So knight d2 was played by Vajolet, but okay, you know, I mean, that's not really helping the knight get much closer to e5, because knight f3 is most likely always going to be met by bishop e4. So knight g6 played, covering the e5 square, and now f3. And this is really where it starts to go quite wrong for white. I mean, Vajolet is still in the complete equality mode. Minic optimistic, but here also Dragon and Stockfish are starting to get optimistic. What's the reason for it? Well, you know, with these moves like f3, look at how passive the white minor pieces are. They've really got no squares at all. So also you look at the major pieces. I mean, 2 open files. Yeah, what sort of squares do you have on them? All you've got access to are the squares on your own back 2 ranks. Everything else is controlled. So actually, in general terms, you know, improving your position for white, it's not easy to see. Now the question is, you know, can black improve its position? And what Minic comes up with is actually to elevate its queenside pawn structure, just move it en masse 1 file down the board, in order to completely restrict any movement from the white pieces, most notably the white queen and the white knight. And then once that's done, this will free the black queen, which, you know, has to keep some sort of eye on the queen side to stop white invading through it. This will free the black queen to get to join in the kingside attack. Now, you don't know whether that's decisive or not, but certainly it's not good news for white if black manages to free up a queen and bring it over to the kingside. So yeah, it's once again one of those situations that talked about in a previous Engine Snack, a Leela game against Chiron, where, you know, just it's this key neural net skill. It was much harder for the handcrafted evaluation engines to achieve. Simply this kind of like being able to peer into the future, you know, through good assessment, I suppose, but understanding what the potential is of the pieces in the position. And well, Minic starts with the move a4. What does a4 do? Well, it's stopping knight b3 to c1 to d3. So this knight is just never ever going to get to that e5 square. Rook g2, b5. What is b5 doing? It's actually stopping this white queen from getting to a6, and that was a move that on the previous move Dragon and Stockfish really wanted to do. Instead of this move rook g2, either they wanted to play queen a6, or they wanted to play b3 first, and after a3 then queen a6. You know, that was really the last desperate chance to escape. But after rook g2, b5, rook c1, c6, the trap on the queen side is shut. The knight can't move anywhere, the queen cannot invade, and these pawns are stopping, you know, the c4 break. So yeah, now this queen on d7 is free, so pressure is going to be added. Queen e7, Minic wastes no time, b3, and now a very careful move from Minic, a3. You might end up losing this a pawn, but it's going to be much harder for white to break open the queen side than if you'd allowed white to play b takes a4, or if you'd played a takes b3, a takes b3, conceding the a file. So and you know, if white doesn't capture that a pawn, then in ending situations, I mean, this is a monster, right? I mean, you're going to get all sorts of bishop b1 takes a2s. You know, opposite coloured bishop endings could be completely lost just because there's a pawn on a3. Very AlphaZero like, you know, just again, there are many, you know, Stockfish 8 AlphaZero games where this sort of thing happens. You know, that Stockfish gets this this defensive position that looks completely holdable, but somehow AlphaZero makes lots of gains while Stockfish waits, and then somehow those gains turn out to be you know, crucial for the win. And yeah, you know, you don't see so many games like that nowadays because so many engines have got neural nets, but yeah, here you definitely are seeing it again. So b4, looking maybe to try and bring the knight round b3 to c5, but it's slow here, you know, and black's got time to bring the queen into play. And what does what's the difference between having the queen on f6 and the queen on d7? Well, it's in the next move we get the idea of knight g5 hitting the pawn on h4, on f3 rather. And well, I mention h4 because this is also a move that can happen, knight h4 hitting these. And we've always got ideas like bishop e4 after, so you can see how big the pressure is. Rook e1 played, rook h8. Why rook h8? Covering the entry square on e8, and it is amazing actually, you know, with all the firepower that white's got, but white's got so little space to manoeuvre in, with all these cramping black minor pieces and the pawn on f4 as well, of course, very important, that it's just very, very hard indeed. So knight b3. White tries to make something of the knight. I mean, what's black's threat? Well, if you just sort of sit and wait a bit, I'm just going knight h3 and knight h4, and yeah, you know, just increasing the position, and then once the rook moves away, well, then we get rook g8, and well, we're controlling 2 of the 3 open files now. So here, knight b3 was played, knight h3. And queen h4 this time. Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? All sorts of ideas. I mean, we could end up playing the knight back to g5 at some stage. Queen h5, knight h4, attacking f3. You know, loads and loads of ideas here. Knight c5 and then king g7. This is quite nice in actual fact. Just we're just going to move the king away from the centre. Notice still all of these entry points are controlled. e6 is available for the knight, but after knight e6, king h7, then yeah, not much problem really. Quite apart from you might be able to take on e6 and then discover a knight check and attack the bishop on f2. So yeah, I mean, Stockfish actually wanted to play king f6, but it's a similar principle, simply that yeah, for all those wonderful major pieces, white cannot do very much. So after knight c5, king g7, rook c1 was played, knight e6 check. Actually, king f6 was a game Stockfish against Dragon. Knight c7. Bishop d7, amazing, just stopping the knight, giving an e8 check, just a king, a knight and a bishop completely controlling the white major pieces. And now a bit of desperation from oh, this was Komodo against Stockfish, but still, you know, somehow, you know, again, this control seems to survive any attempts that white makes to destabilize the position. Queen d2, knight g5, and then yeah, this enormous pressure against the bishop on h2 really stops white from doing anything now. Rook e2, queen h3, white has to go all defensive, and well, it's just complete carnage. No way that white can survive this. So rook c1 was played, knight g5, and now c4. Bit of desperation from Vajolet, but it's not only desperation, because after c4 we go rook c3. This is the idea. It's slow, but the rook is defending the pawn on f3, and we're also threatening to maybe invade along the a file. So a different channel for counterplay. Rook a8 from Minic, very, you know, calm move, just stopping the threat and then asking white, well, what have you got to do? Not easy to think. Queen h5, targeting the f3 pawn again, rook f2, rook a7, just looking to transfer the rook either to the e file or move it over to the g file with the king out of the way. If you do something like queen e8, then we've got rook e7, and we're going to get rook e1 check, so that's rather nasty as well. So queen d2 played, king g8, rook f1, bishop h3, king g8, getting out of any possible checks and freeing the rook to come to g7 or to h7 even. Rook g1 and rook e7. So Minic decides on something different, controlling the e file now. And, well, we're going to play king h7 and then threaten knight takes f3. Queen f2, king h7, rook e1. And now it all just starts to fall apart. I mean, rook takes a3. I go knight h4, takes, knight g takes f3. And, well, you see how powerful those pieces are. just what can you do? I've actually got no idea at all. It's just you know, at the very least we're threatening ideas like knight takes g1, and well, there's lots of other stuff as well. So after rook e1, takes, knight takes f3 played, still no checks for white, still no queen e7, queen e2, bishop g4, knight d7, a little bit of tactical irritation, but we go queen f5, stopping the knight taking on f6, queen takes d7, and well, you know, white's in a very unpleasant pin, and actually you count up the material and black seems to be 2 pawns up. And not only that, you know, it's we've got, you know, plenty of targets on the queen side. This pawn on a3 is really making, you know, this pawn on a2 into a huge target. And queen b2, that's the kind of the culmination, I think, really. You know, the queen is just an outpost on an outpost of the pawn on a3, and just paralyzes black completely. And after king f3, we got this nice finish, f3, forcing the exchange of queens. Black queened, and the game was over. So a really beautiful game from Minic, full of content. I mean, I love the opening plan. You know, h6 and then g5 and f5, really playing against this, yeah, this slightly half-hearted development from white with bishop f4. And then afterwards, you know, the way that black played, you know, with the exchange sacrifice, the king coming to f7, then the exchange sacrifice, the king on e6 here, you know, very, very striking. And of course, you know, there was that lovely bit passage of play at the end with a4, then b5, then c6, and you know, in essence, the position doesn't seem to have changed that much. You know, all the black pieces are still on the same squares. But I think that's Komodo beating Cheng there. But yeah, this advance of the pawns has just got a clamp on the white position, and that frees the black queen. And well, you're not sure whether it's you know, an actual win for black, but well, with the queen in the fray, it's not only the queen's pressure that you get, it's also supporting other pieces like the knights to line up on the white position. And then finally, you know, when the whole thing is cleared away, all the tactics happen, you end up with this move, queen b2, and once again, you know, this foresight in gaining space on the king side, cramping white. Yeah, I mean, this turns out to be absolutely crucial, and turns you know, what might have been a complicated win with a pawn on a7 into something absolutely trivial. So there we are. Hope you enjoyed that. If you enjoyed this video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which is chock-a-block full of great analysis like this and huge amounts of tips and tricks, professional ideas for how to study with engines in the very best way. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching this video, and hope to see you at the next one. Thanks for watching.